Fluid AR movement, shell eject next, and we back grooving precise, exact groupings, pressure made, fine tuning, wrong place, life don't like.
Hey guys, Chris and Phil again from Trigon.
Morning. So we want to talk to you a little bit about AR-10s this morning. We get a significant amount of questions about them, and me as a guy who built one and had it not work out so well, kind of wanted to share a little bit of information because since we do get enough questions about it, it's obviously interesting to some people. So we're going to give you the best knowledge we have on the subject this morning, at least as much as we can in a fairly short video.
We even have an outline. Phil did it. That's how you can tell this is going to be a slightly more professional video than you're used to. So, starting right off, get this out of the way. There's a huge difference between AR-10s and AR-15s. This should be fairly obvious to you guys. The big difference is going to be the physical size of the receivers. Obviously, is going to be larger for an AR-10. But it is also really easy to build an AR-15 for general purposes. You know, you can kind of pick and choose the parts and kind of throw general purpose optics and stuff on it and be good to go. It's not really that way for AR-10s.
Right. I mean, in my mind, and I'm an old guy too, all right? I want to throw this out there because I hear a lot of this. I'm in my mid-60s, all right? AR-15s are my favorite rifles, and to me, they make the best general purpose rifle. And I see a lot of guys come in the store and they say, I want to get something for my dad, but he's old like you and he doesn't want an AR. And I'm like, well, how many ARs does he have? How many has he shot? And they're like, well, none. Well, you know, let me just say to that, anybody that's never shot an AR, you need to get them to shoot one before they make up their mind that they're not worth having. But that's subject for a different video, different day. AR-15.
We have an outline.
We do have an outline, yes. AR-15, great general purpose rifle. AR-10, not well suited for a general purpose rifle.
Yeah, let me kind of clarify that a little bit because I think it needs to be said. So with AR-10s, there's lots of little things when building them that can be different. And we're going to get this as we go down the list here a little bit, but I'm gonna move this up so we can just talk about it now. With an AR-10, there's various sizes of receivers. There's various receiver cuts. There's various rail heights and things of that nature. So for this example here, you can see the rail on this is a different height than the actual upper receiver. That's just kind of how it is because this is a low shelf or a low tang, however you want to say it, upper receiver, and then this is for a high tang upper receiver. Now it does technically fit and it would technically function, it's just going to be an offset height. So if you were to put iron sights on this, chances are you probably wouldn't be able to get them to zero. Little things like that if you're not super well versed in AR-10s, you're probably not going to know right out of the gate, and when you're sourcing your own components, you could run into potential issues.
Yeah, so kind of the thing to keep in mind, if your heart is set on building your own AR-10, hey, that's great, but you really should be prepared for a lot of trial and error. And what that is going to equate to is you're going through that process, you're going to be buying different parts, you're really going to lose your economic advantage.
Yeah. So
it's important to consider that, right?
I would say that's one of the biggest motivators for people to build their own is that in their mind, it's going to be cheaper if I can build my own, or if I can have one built and stay on the cheaper side of things. You're going to lose that advantage because you're probably going to spend more money, definitely more time, a higher ammo cost to get the thing to run the way you want it to run with whatever setup it is that you're running. And that's really one of the biggest advantages of buying a factory build AR-10, in my opinion, is that they've already done that R&D. They know what needs to be done. And honestly, right now, you know, depending on your budget, there's factory built AR-10s that are fantastic rifles. And they're not really that far apart from what you could build one for unless you go, you know, insanely cheap, which you're going to have a significant amount of problems with those anyway.
Yeah,
So
cheap is cheap for a reason, guys.
We're not gonna,
always cheap for a reason.
We're not going to go down that road in this video, but one of the biggest advantages, in my opinion, to buying a factory AR-10 is that you get that factory rifle warranty where, and same with us, if you have us build an AR-10, we do this as well. Hey, this isn't running the way that I want it to run. What needs to be changed? How do I get that figured out? And you're going to have some assistance walking you through that. Whereas if you order in all your own components and you try to piece it together yourself, if you can't figure it out on your own, now you're paying a shop like us or wherever you live somewhere to go through your gun, take it back apart, put it back together, make sure everything is assembled properly, number one, for safety reasons, and then take that gun to the range and spend some time shooting it, figuring out the ammunition that it's going to like, the buffer system, all that sort of stuff. By the time you've paid somebody to do that, any cost savings you had in that build, they're gone.
Yeah.
You've spent all that extra money now, and you didn't really save anything. So it is absolutely possible to build an AR-10. I'm not going to say that it's not. Lots of people do it. Lots of companies do it. But pay attention to the companies that do it, right? There's companies that do it, and then there's companies that don't. The companies that build AR-10s, generally speaking, are either really budget-focused companies or they're generally higher-end companies. There's not a lot of middle road AR-10s. And I think the reason for that is because by the time you start putting the money into an AR-10 to make it do what you want it to do, it costs more money, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to split. It's really hard to split the middle with those. You're so close to one, and you're not that far from another that your gap, so to speak, is small. And to split that gap exactly perfect and maintain that economic advantage, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah.
Especially not your first time out.
So what we'd encourage you to do is when it comes to an AR-10, if you're going to own one, put a lot of thought and spend some time determining what exactly are you going to use it for. Narrow down a specific purpose that you're building that gun for. And one of the things that is pretty common right now is I'm hearing a lot of talk and a lot of questions about AR-10s chambered in 6.5 Creedmore.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more popular. The 6.5 Creedmore is, I remember when it was not first introduced, but when it first started to become popular, ammo was difficult to find and things like that. Nowadays, that's not the case. It's almost as easy to find as .308. So the argument for, buy a .308 because ammo is more common doesn't really hold water anymore, in my opinion. The 6.5 Creedmore, we're in Michigan, so that is under the legal limit. So you could use that at night for coyote hunting, which is a huge thing, and that boosts their popularity quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we hear so many questions on that caliber in an AR-10. The one thing I will say is that your gas systems and various things with a Creedmore, obviously the pressure differences between .308 and 6.5 they're different. So what works for a .308 and what makes a .308 run really well may or may not, in your application, do what you want it to do in 6.5 Creedmore. And most guys that are running Creedmores are going to want to run, they're looking for the top shelf level of accuracy that they can get out of it. That's what they're trying to emulate a bolt gun with just semi-automatic capabilities. So your budget comes back into play again, where, all right, well, now if we're really trying to do this, we're going to be buying this and this and this and this, and now your price, the advantage that you had is gone. You've lost that advantage of it's cheaper.
An AR-10 as a general rule, I'd say for a budget gun, probably not a good choice to try and build or buy an AR-10 on a limited budget. Now, the other thing that I think we should point out is determine right away before you start this process, are you going to run it unsuppressed or do you need to run it suppressed? Now, when I talk about some of the problems I had with mine, I was wanting to run it suppressed and I was tearing up buffer systems and really fortunate that I didn't do a lot more damage.
Cracked the lower receiver on it, just the way that it was built. It was not assembled properly with proper parts to begin because there's so much variety in AR-10s. It's easy to do that on accident, and I don't think that it was a purposeful misassembly. But that being said, it did lead to eventually a failure of the lower receiver, where the lower receiver, I can't remember exactly where it was. It was back by the takedown pin area, wasn't it, where it actually had that crack kind of back in
Well,
here?
it was really difficult to determine where that crack was, but there was definitely some flex there that I felt like shouldn't have been there. But it was very noticeable that the buffer system had gotten hammered by the bolt carrier group.
Yeah.
So there was definite scars on the bolt carrier group. So it was a lot of trouble. Again, it wasn't intentional, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not the dumbest guy in the world either. But this is just about, helping you consider these things. Now, we can build an AR-10 for you.
Yeah, we've built lots of AR-10s.
And they've turned out well.
Yeah, we've had great luck with them. I have one professional guide that he uses a couple of our 6.5 AR-10s. He loves them. He absolutely loves them. He bought one, and then he loved the capability that it had. That he just had to have another one. So they're really cool rifles, and they definitely add a lot of capability to you as a shooter. You just have to be aware that your window of what it can do is a little bit more narrow, and you have to really define that ahead of time so that when you hit the ground running with it, you're running. You're not sputtering out and playing all sorts of weird games with it.
Yeah.
As a general rule, and I tell people this when they order AR-10s, depending on your budget, if your budget's high enough, most of the time, I would say that a factory-built AR-10 is probably a better choice for a lot of reasons. But the number one is going to be that they've already done all the R&D. They've already done all the idea of, hey, does it work with this? Can I suppress it? Can I not suppress it? They've done all that. They know that already before they ship the gun out to you. And so you're spending a little bit more money probably for a quality factory-built AR-10, but you are getting a product that is essentially ready to run out of the box.
Yeah, it's going to run. If you do the proper research, it's going to run for you. You're not going to be frustrated and disappointed.
And same goes for if you had us build an AR-10, it's going to be slightly more money than if you sourced all the components yourself. But we've already done the research. We already know, these barrels are what we use. We use these bolt carriers. We like these upper, we already know all the answers to those questions. You may or may not right now. And then the tools, this is something that not a lot of people think about, but the tools to build an AR-10 aren't always the same as an AR-15. The obvious thing is the vice block for the lower is different. The lower is bigger with an AR-10, so you need a vice block that'll hold an AR-10. Your barrel extension, like a reaction rod from Geisley is a popular way to do it, but those are different for AR-10s. Obviously, they're bigger around than for an AR-15. So if you already build AR-15s, that's great, and they are assembled in a very similar way, but the tools are different. So you may have to buy additional tools, and you got to factor that into the cost of your build. If you got to buy $500 worth of tools, you're in a spot where it's not necessarily an advantage, especially if you're not going to build, on a professional level like what we do, where we're building them regularly and you're using those tools fairly regularly. Then you can kind of cost average those tools across, a longer period of time. But if you're doing one and done,
it's kind of a waste of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money to throw at it just to throw at it. We have I would say probably like almost half of the tools that we use are AR-10 specific, at least. Like even some of the barrel nut wrenches are specific and all that sort of thing. So it definitely is something you have to consider.
So in a nutshell, guys, put some thought into your AR-10 before you just jump into that pool. Understand that it's not going to make a good general purpose gun. Define a specific purpose that you want to use that for, and keep your AR-15s for your general purpose rifles. We can help you source a factory built, or we can build one for you, but our whole goal is just to hopefully save you a lot of frustration and save you some unnecessary expenditures in the process, because hey, nobody likes to get a brand new gun and then have it fail right out of the gate. And unfortunately, that happens more frequently with AR-10s that guys try and build themselves than it does with an AR-15. So for whatever that's worth, hopefully this is something that can help you guys out. And any questions, get a hold of Chris and Tim at the store here, and they'll be happy to help you.
Thanks, guys.
Fluid AR movement, shell eject next, and we back grooving precise.